I should go sideways.
All right, guys, we are back live again, Grasshoppers, with our old buddy Ali Crew. Our old buddy meaning like what? Last month we've known each other, or 2 months we've.
It feels like forever. Is that a good thing? That's a compliment.
It is a good thing. It is beautiful. Yeah, we're like buddies now. How's the family doing? How are the boys?
They're great. Thank you. They're really good. Sam is up to doing 5 full, like, honest pull-ups at a time. Yeah. I'm still working on one.
What did he start at? How many could you do when he started?
Like none. Oh. And now he does 4 sets of 5 before hockey practice, and then he went back and he wanted to do 50 more. I was starving last night after practice. I'm like, can we please go home? He's like, no, I need to do more pull-ups. So I don't know.
That's excellent. I love that. I love when kids are like that, when they couldn't do something first and all of a sudden now they can do it. That's fantastic. Yeah, good stuff. Good. Well, so this is she's like showing off. I'm stuck in my office with the same scenery every day, that those 2 jerseys behind my head. Now you are out by the water showing off.
Well, you show off at 3:55 every morning at Tom's Pond or whatever that is. Todd's Pond. I think it's Tom's Pond.
Yeah, it should be Tom's. It's actually Todd's Point, but it should be Tom's. Yes, definitely.
Maybe we can rename it.
So we want to. We're going to touch on a hot topic for a lot of people. Well, maybe it should be more of a topic. Mental health and wellness, particularly during this pandemic, is something that's really important. And again, I don't think it's being talked about as much as it should be. And we can't give up names, obviously, but I just was speaking to a gentleman we've had the NHL alumni. We just had last week, we had 3 guys that attempted suicide last week. Luckily, none of them were successful. But and again, that's just a small thing. And there's a lot more other people. We talk about suicides amongst veterans and all that. And we keep using the number amongst veterans of like 22 suicides a day. But I understand that's pretty low, right?
I shouldn't quote numbers. Remember, I'm like a number nerd, and unless I know the numbers, I feel really hesitant to say them. But I do recall hearing, and I know anecdotally from some of the other hockey moms who actually work with military families, that it's a really tough time, even for people that you would think are like pretty resilient. They're trained, to handle tough times. They handle things that are a lot tougher than I could ever handle, and yet they're really struggling because, it's simple to say because, right? But there's a lot of things that are causing challenges for people. One of the things that I studied a long time ago was when you feel a sense of like loss of control and no agency, then it's really hard for people to be able to look down the road to a better time. And I think right now this like the restrictions are making people feel like they just can't see a way forward, And some people are really busy and really stay busy, but for other people, it's hard to set goals, because they're kind of like, what's the point? Like I could go study something, like some of your guys, maybe post-career, they have no idea just how much a difference they could make in maybe some young kids' lives, or, and maybe no one's coming after them and saying, hey, we really need you. And we should do that for each other more. We should reach out and say, hey, we really need you.
Yep. I agree totally. Listen, I think as amongst alumni, I'll just talk about the hockey alumni, the NHL alumni. The head of the NHL alumni is Glenn Healy, an old teammate of mine, a friend of mine, works out of Toronto, and he's great, does as much as he can. Got all kinds of new programs set up for him and everything. But again, it really is. It's the guys themselves individually not wanting to come out and get help. Again, I think it's largely a pride issue. But again, we don't help each other enough, right? It's just
I think we don't know, like it's such a common problem. Like you want to be proactive, but you don't know when, and you don't know how, and you don't know. It's almost like it has to get kind of bad before you know it's time, and by then it's hard. It's hard to. So it's like you have to be constantly looking out for each other before it gets bad. You have to be buddies with people, and then you'll be sensitive to the subtle changes in how they're doing. Like I was just reading yesterday about adolescents and youth. And I didn't really understand what to look for exactly, because adolescents can be moody anyway. And so they were like, if your kid is just having, kids get the blues, they have tough times. We all get the blues. Like, certain people in my household, it might last a week and then we're good the next week. You don't know. It could be a day, it could be a week, I go out running every day to try to be somewhat okay. But for adolescents, it could be like angrier than normal. or it could be the other direction. It could be much more reclusive. It's just so it's changes, and unless you're with people, you can't really detect those changes all that well.
Okay, so let's talk about this again. Adolescent, and as a parent, you know, do you think you should be more vigilant about looking for issues right now?
I do. I do. And I think that is, well, I was doing some research yesterday for a really great organization. I'm actually hoping to do some work for them, so I don't want to say who it is yet, but I really like the quality of the videos they're producing. And I basically just reached out and was like, I want to help you because you're doing a great job getting good information out there. And so I was doing some initial fact checking, and I was really surprised to find something that completely shocked me. So there's a study in the UK that looked at over 20 weeks time post lockdown, so from March through August, and it sampled like 30,000 people, and they had them fill out depression and anxiety questionnaires, like a 7-question anxiety questionnaire and a 9-question depression questionnaire over 20 weeks. And then they looked at changes over time, and they kept only the data for the people who had a full sample set. And they found that actually, I was completely shocked. Right after lockdown, moods improved. And from weeks 2 to 5, the best improvement was from weeks 2 to 5, and then it kind of plateaued over time. And I think that's kind of because people were uneasy and nervous before action was taken by the government to try to provide some security. And then once lockdown happened, people gradually acclimated to it. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, lockdown is really bad. Everybody's really depressed. It's going to be horrible. I was worried about the sailors that were, having to go through quarantine for 2 weeks before going out to sea. But everybody responds differently. And for some people, having like something known, even if it's a restriction, it's known. There's some certainty. Maybe that's helpful. But adolescents, I think, value freedom, and they value choice, and they're just beginning to try to differentiate from, their home lives and their parents, and they want some agency. They're really intent on making choices for themselves. And so I think this loss of control is maybe harder for them. And I do think that, we should look for times to, go on a drive. We actually just went up to New Jersey, 6-hour drive each way with my 2 boys for my stepmom's funeral. And it was a sad occasion, but opportunities like that are good to, cement an understanding of where the kids are and listen to the music that they're listening to, and reflected on mortality, listening to Dark Side of the Moon on the way home. Because unfortunately, my stepmother, my dad's wife of 28 years, actually passed due to COVID recently. And so there's, it's tough times right now. But like, wow, can you hear me?
You're blown away.
If I go in the canal, call someone, okay?
So it is tough times right now. Do you openly talk about it? Do you sit down, like, let's say for anybody, adolescents, I guess, are different, but do you say, listen, this is a tough time right now. There's no use hiding that fact.
Right.
It's gone for 10 months. Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? Do you do that with kids?
Well, the research says yes. I was skeptical. The research says do that because you give them an opportunity to actually put voice to their feelings. They may not always, especially younger kids, you may just encourage them to draw. I differ from the research a little bit as a parent. My experience is if you give young kids ideas, I think that you can almost create bigger problems than there might actually be. Right. And so, but I'm a farm girl. I'm simple. I'm old school, so I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. And I do know people who have benefited from bringing their kids for professional counseling. But my approach has always been, you and I both grew up on farms, right, yeah. Tom? And so part of our youth was accustomed to life and death. And I actually had to put a cat down because it fell through the rafters in my barn. It fell down, it broke its neck. And I remember being a really young kid and having to make that choice because the cat was going to die. I had to actually put it in a bucket and put it down. I had to euthanize it myself, and I was only 8. And I had to make that choice on my own to do that. So, I mean, my life has really been shaped by those farm experiences. Yeah. So I think I raised my kids kind of with that in the back of my mind, where like, this is a tough time and life is tough. And, 100 years ago, we were actually talking about this on the way back from practice. 100 years ago, people were going through, 1918, 1919 pandemic and World War I, right? And it was just an unbelievably difficult time. I mean, 50 million people at a clip
Right.
infected and dying due to both of those things on, within a 4-year span. So it's a tough time. It's tough for our kids, this generation. I mean, this pandemic is going to be the one that's going down in the history books for our kids, the young people to live with.
So did I ever tell you my empathy story? Ever talk about my empathy?
I don't think so.
Oh God! So I've told the audience that's listening is good. I've told this story a few times. It's kind of funny. When I was going on Survivor, they do all these psychological tests for you, and they bring you up to Los Angeles for 5 days, and there's way more psychological testing than there is physical testing. And at the end of the 5 days, they sit you down and they evaluate the results. And this really nice older woman, soft voice, and everything. The doctor there. She goes, "So, Tom, you have a hard time with empathy." And I swear to God, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, do I even know what the word means? Like I'm trying to think, do I know the definition? So I tried to trick her. I tried to say, well, what is your definition of the word empathy? And she started laughing at me. She says, you don't even know what it means, do you? And I said, well, I have a rough idea. So it's, obviously it's the ability, I guess, to like if somebody comes to me with a problem, I guess again, same thing with growing up on a farm. If somebody comes to me with a problem, I don't think I'm helping them to say, oh, poor you. I feel like, okay, let's find a solution to fix it. So I tell that story because, if somebody does have a problem, let's say it's not just an adolescent, it's a friend, a relative, whatever it is, you think they're down in the dumps or whatever because of this pandemic and COVID and everything.
Yeah.
You sit there, you need to be, I guess you have to be somewhat empathetic, but you want to help them too, don't you? Like, you want to find a solution?
Well, yeah. I think you have to be sensitive to are they ready for problem solving? Or do they need somebody to like just get them out and go on a walk, right? People have to want to help themselves, I think, a little bit. And so this is where it's important to be a friend, and to actually be with the person well enough to know what they need at that moment. One of my kids would say empathy is overrated, but I don't think I agree. I think that you are probably pretty empathetic. I don't know about the test that you went through. You were pretty loyal, right? So you told me that before on your team.
Yeah,
almost too loyal, they thought.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the other result from the testing was she says you're like a sheepdog, and me too. I always wanted to look out for people around me. And it's funny because my mother told a story all the time, and I don't remember this. Is when I was really small. I was on the farm. You had to get the school bus all the time. Every morning, and we had this one girl in our neighborhood who would get on the bus with us, and she had some disease. She was going blind. So she needed help to get on the bus all the time. Oh. So the families all got together, and they were going to get one child from each family to take care of this girl every day to get her on and off the bus. And my mother says that I just decided, no, I was going to get her on the bus all the time. I wouldn't let anybody else do it. I did it. And I don't remember the story. But she said, and it really was, I look back at it, like all the teams I played on and everything. I was always a captain or assistant captain. I always had, sticking up for my teammates all the time and everything. So it's one of those deals. So yeah, it's, the word empathetic. I have tried a couple of times, like consciously made an effort to be empathetic. And there's been a couple of times where people go, Tom, stop. It's just not working. It's just not natural. It's actually, I wasn't telling them that I was trying to be empathetic. So, but it's interesting during this.
That's funny.
Yeah, I know. It is interesting during this time though, too, because yes, you want to be helping other people. And I think we've discussed this before. We feel the same way. You get much more by helping people, right? But at the same time, you got to take care of yourself during this time too. You got to be, like you with your family, you're taking care of them, but you also have to take care of yourself, correct?
Right. Yeah, you do. I was thinking about that, but I've always heard people say you have to take care of yourself first. And if you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of other people? But I think sometimes taking care of other people helps you take care of yourself too. I think it's bidirectional. And I think that sometimes, like, if we focus too much on, the things that are, difficult, then we kind of forget how to move. We just kind of get like dragged down by the weight of that. So I think maybe sometimes, parents' old wisdom of, other people have it worse off than you is maybe not such bad advice. Yeah. Maybe good to, look outwards too and start helping others. And I also heard somebody else say yesterday that movement and taking action, making behavior changes precedes how you feel.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to do that first. You have to actually choose to do something. But that's where it gets really tough sometimes for people to do that themselves. They do need someone to come along and like ring the doorbell and roust them. I had a friend that I would roust in the morning and just be like, we're going for a hike. So I would tell her, I'm like, you might get rousted tomorrow. I don't, what time do you normally get up? So I wouldn't get there too early, but I'm like, just stand by. We might be going.
That's cool.
So maybe like if you have a friend who, you think is a little bit in the dumps, tell them to stand by for a rousting. So they're always on edge a little bit. They always have the gloves ready and like the scarf ready.
Okay. It is true though too, right? So like, it's like, yeah, you want to take care of yourself, but it's almost like if there's something bothering you, or like, let's say you have a physical pain, I say to myself, well, don't give the pain a voice, right? It's there. The more you think about it, it's becoming a bigger issue, right? I mean, obviously you don't want to put yourself in danger if you got a broken bone, then you can't. But if you're just sore from working out or whatever, or you're tired or having a bad day, the more you sit around, oh, poor me. I just feel like, you drag yourself down even more, right? It's like, okay, get going. Like you said, have a list of things to do, get going, move, go help somebody else.
Right. I think physical pain and emotional pain and chronic pain are difficult things for people to understand unless they've actually been there. Chronic pain can be really debilitating. Right. And, like I have a chronic back injury, so I can kind of relate to that, but again, even that, it's like some motion is better than bed rest. They used to say, go to bed but that's just not really the thinking anymore. Emotional pain. I was looking at, treating major depression, the importance of having a social support and the role of exercise and all of that is very, very helpful. So we just cannot discount how much exercise helps with the neurotransmitters and just your brain chemistry. Yep. It's really important. Like even placebo-controlled trials have validated the important role of exercise. So getting out there and getting moving is important. But if you have like weird stuff going on with you as you get older, like I do, you should make time for yourself to go get that checked out, because it's amazing what a physical therapist could do.
Right. No question. You're not getting old. What are you talking about? You're not getting old.
No, I'm definitely getting old. I have like my two fingers are numb. I thought it was frostbite from a long walk, but I'm like, no, maybe not. So I wait a couple weeks.
I've heard a lot of people say that when their hands get cold, their fingers, like they can't move their fingers. So I don't know, just an old injury or something like that. But come on, what are you like 22 years old or something?
No, 49.
That is true, right? Like you brought up the word depression there. Like I guess for me being the old farm boy, I really never heard of depression. My mother went through it when I was smaller. My mother, we still didn't ever talk about it. She was like, she really, at one point, my father had gotten into the fire department and he was off at firefighter school. And my mother was home with my sister and I, and there was really nothing going on. And she had a mental incident where, all the relatives had to come over and everything. And so she didn't leave the house for, it was for like a year. But again, we didn't talk about back at the farm. It was really, really never discussed what happened to her. And eventually she got to the point where she got back into life. But I'm assuming it was some form of depression or whatever. Is that something that you can, like, how do you, if somebody that you love or something, you see them and you think, wow, they're really getting depressed. Is there like, what can you pinpoint that and say, well, that is depression?
Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned this there's lots of self-assessments you can do on the web, but one of the best known tools is a 9-question questionnaire, and I believe it's freely available. And I would imagine right now, most people have access to telemedicine and virtual health visits. So you could inquire about that. The one person who's going to be interviewed that I mentioned I was doing some research for, they've actually converted to almost 100% telemedicine, telehealth visits, so you can get counseling online. But again, this is something where like the person has to take a little bit of initiative too. So if you are home and it's your spouse or it's your child, there may be ways to set up a group counseling session, for 2 people, so you could inquire about that. But I think, back to your initial just question, like, is it okay to talk about? Yeah, it is. I think when you say, gosh, this is really frustrating, like this is going on forever. Like, when do we get to back to normal life? My husband has gotten actually his 2 doses of vaccine. And lately he's been like, when can I go to a restaurant? So just having a casual conversation about, like, what are we looking forward to doing? Yeah. Might open up, it might get like the traction going on kind of what the underlying irritations are. that are weighing the person down. It may not be full on depression, but it may just be like, my goodness, when is this over? It's Groundhog Day. And just starting to talk can really help.
It is Groundhog Day today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, is it really? Seriously?
Yeah. I wouldn't know that. I was looking at it this morning. But that is funny. Like I don't know if I told you the other day, what? Like I'm like you. I'm usually in a great mood, but I was out for my march at Todd's Point, and there was hardly anybody out there. And this car comes by. I mean, it's a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. The car comes by. Maybe it was going 20 miles an hour, 25. Well, I lose my mind. I start yelling, and there's nobody else around. The car had already gone down the road, and I'm yelling at the guy driving the car. And all of a sudden, I stopped. Tom, what are you doing? It was actually kind of funny. When I stopped and yelled, I laughed at myself because it was so ridiculous. But for that moment, I lost my mind. I don't know if it was some release or whatever. I had all this built up frustration. But like it is tough. Like for me, for example, I live at home. I go to the gym by myself in the morning, so I don't have to wear a mask. I'm really never around people at all. We do these podcasts and everything. And most times, like you said, if I keep busy, I'm doing things, I'm helping other people, I'm fine. But there are those rare moments where all of a sudden you're sitting there going like we've been doing this for 10 months now. So it's got enough.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. So you were out there yelling by yourself at 3:55 in the morning?
Yeah. So it was the funniest thing too, because I just totally lost my mind for about 15 seconds. I'm yelling like, "Oh, yeah, you this and that." I'm yelling at this guy. The guy is long gone down the road. He can't even hear me. Nobody around to talk to. And all of a sudden, I stopped and I go, "Oh, no, you're an idiot! Like, what are you doing?" Like, I really was laughing at myself.
Actually, what you just said, I think, is really helpful. Like you mentioned, self-awareness. You were self-aware enough to go, "Tom, you're being an idiot." I was just reading about that yesterday. Being self-aware is a really, really important thing. And I think it can maybe go too far. You're too inwardly focused and maybe too weighed down by your feelings. But being able to recognize that allows you to take action and help yourself. And you started laughing at yourself. I do that all the time.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, you know what? Like I have really found over the last, doing my book and all this True Grit Life that I've been doing, and it evolves over time. Like I feel like, I know we've talked about this in the past, but I just feel like I've learned to learn more, right? I just feel like I know so much more about physically, about my body, about diet, all the stuff, but more mentally too. Like just recognizing that, in the past, like you're growing up on the farm and being a hockey player, like to tell another man that you love him, like a good friend or something like that. Hey, I love you, brother. Like to say something like that would have just been totally foreign. Like now it's like, I've got friends of mine and this one guy in particular. Well, this Corey Hirsch is a great friend. I don't know if I mentioned him to you. He was a former goaltender in the NHL, and he had some mental health issues and really helped himself and got better. And he's a huge advocate now for mental health. And we've got to be good buddies, and we talk about this stuff. And I remember the first time at the end of the conversation, he goes, "I love you, brother." And it was still kind of awkward, like, "Oh, okay, I love you too." But it's funny, right? And we just have total respect for each other. But to be that former NHL hockey player, farm boy growing up in Canada, to say to somebody, just to anybody, that you love them was just a foreign thing. And I just realized now over time, you just get more realizing, like, throw away those old ideas, right? I mean, what you're supposed to be. So, yeah. Right.
No, that's so true. I mean, yesterday, so I was doing research on this thing, right? And this short video, it's 7 minutes. So if any of your grasshoppers want to look for it, it's called The Science of Happiness, and it has to do with gratitude. And I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes. But it really does specifically talk about gratitude and saying that specifically to someone, like what you appreciate about them and what you care about them really does help improve our own mood. And so I think that probably you have that resident in you, Tom, for a lot longer than you might realize. Like I would imagine that you have always really loved animals.
Yeah.
And right. And I grew up loving animals too, like really deeply. And animals don't communicate. They don't use language, right? But you can read them very well. So I would imagine actually there's a lot more depth to you than you perhaps even recognize.
It's funny to say, like I'm kind of like a dog whisperer, I think. Like I had recently, for a while, it was probably over a year ago before the pandemic, these two young girls were out walking a dog, and they lost the dog, got off the leash. And they were chasing the dog around, and the dog obviously thinks, "Oh, this is great," running around, everybody's chasing them. And girls were getting kind of panicked. I could see. I said, "Okay, let's calm down. Don't chase the dog anymore. Just let the dog calm down, and he'll come to us." So all of a sudden, the dog comes walking over to me, and I just grabbed the leash and gave him a pet. And the girls are like, like, who are you? Like, but it's just growing up on a farm. But don't you think, like, I think that's a great example. Like, dogs read you too. Like, they know,
right,
particularly with their owners, they know when something's wrong. They know when you're tense or you're scared, you're nervous. It's the same thing with a stranger. You walk up and you're scared of the dog knows, okay, what's going on here? Why is he scared? But if you're nice and relaxed with the dog's just going to walk up to you and you pet it and it's fine. Yeah.
That's very true. And in fact, horses, I grew up around horses, raising and training horses. And I had a foal that was born on our tiny, tiny little farm in New Jersey. But I got to know that horse over the years. And because I raised him from a baby foal to age 4 when I could finally ride him. And I got back into riding 26 years later. And the first horse I got back into riding was an Irish sport horse. It's a mare. She's 9. She's very vigorous and very just very smart and just way wired. And so maybe not the best horse for me to get back into riding on, now that I'm a mother and older and all of that. But I had to ride I had to really be on it in order to stay safe with her, because she was just a little bit nuts. Like, a fly landed in the pond to the right of her as we were walking through the woods, and she jumped because a fly landed in the pond. So I was nervous to ride her. But the point of this whole story was that I was nervous to ride her, and I was keyed up, and I knew that she would know that, and she would take advantage of me, and I wouldn't be able to ride. Like, when you're riding a horse, you have to feel the horse. You have to move with the horse. You can't be all stiff, and the horse will feel that. So I decided to, is there any, these feelings of jitteriness and things? I was like, is there any way I could change how I think about those feelings into something that's different? So instead of being scared, could I tell myself that those feelings are actually being excited? I'm excited. I'm looking forward to riding her. And so I did, and it helped me calm down. It helped me retrain my entire mindset around being nervous, because it's really the excitement and fear feel a lot the same, actually, if you pay attention to your body. So I'm I'm just excited. Right.
It worked good. Well, you know what? I did that. I have a trainer friend of mine that taught me, again, going out for Survivor. And he brought me into his gym. And he would have me memorize a poem before I got to the gym. So I would get to the point where I could just recite the poem verbatim, no problem at all. And then he'd elevate my heart rate. He'd either get me mad or he'd get me on a bike, whatever it was. And then he'd do the poem again. I couldn't remember the poem once my heart rate was elevated. So it was really interesting to, first of all, recognize that that's what was going on with me. And then say, okay, now how do you fix the problem? Just like you did. You changed your mindset, right? We lost Allie there. So for me,
I'm here.
Yeah, I just saying. So for me, it was really interesting to see how my mind was affected so much by my body, right? So if I got mad, my heart rate was elevated, it affected my ability to recite the poem. But then it's like you did. For you changed your mindset. For me, I had to practice taking the deep breaths, calming myself down. It was amazing because I think, well, geez, I played in the NHL for 11 years. And I learned this already. I should have known that. And maybe it was something that was more, I learned over time. But it was really interesting just to see it go into action and actually do something about it. So it's cool. Yeah,
no, it's true. When I lost you, I don't know if you mentioned this, but was part of that taking 3 deep breaths? Did you say that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really good. And it's really that's so true.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's very interesting. I had to do that while I was driving up to New Jersey because, I know why. I was going to tell you about this. E does not mean excellent when you look at your gas gauge. Oh, I almost did. I remembered, I was packing up the car and the boys, and there's where are my shoes and all this and that going on. And Sam, did you bring your toothbrush? And did you bring socks? And no, I forgot socks. It was just a mess getting in the car. It always is, even if you plan ahead. But anyway, we're finally in the car. We're finally going. I look at the gas gauge and it says E, and I'm like, oh, that's great. E is, excellent on the report cards for the kids. They don't use A through F. So I'm like, we're good to go. That's awesome. We take off, and an hour later, we're about to go under the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, which is 17 miles long or something like that. It's pretty long. And I look down, the gas light had come on. I'm like, what? It said E before. How can this be? How can it be almost? And then I was like, oh, E means really empty.
Come on, you really didn't think E was for excellent, did you?
I did, and I'm gonna blame it. I'm gonna blame it on our Toyota Estima, the 1999 Toyota Estima that I drove all over Japan, because I really think that car was so old, and in Japan everything's reversed, and so I really think the gas gauge, when the needle is to the left, I really think that was a good thing. instead of like now everything switched and the needle over to the left toward E is not a good thing, but I'm sure someone will prove me wrong. I tried to do a Google image search to validate this. I couldn't quite. I think the gas gauge went from top to bottom instead of left to right. Anyway, I just had like a weird, I've had COVID, right? So I do think that there's some weird brain rewiring that happened, but I'm going to blame it on COVID anyway. I don't care if it's like not proven by science.
On Thursday afternoons, I get on. We have a show with 3 of my former teammates, and we have a segment that's called On the Couch. We may have to get you on the show to discuss
to discuss my horrible. I just couldn't believe we were doing some quick math. We're like, so your choice is to turn around at that point, like break the line in traffic, turn around, go through the cones and go back and go get gas, or like try to figure out, using proportions and math, which is why I'm, really a big proponent of math. Everyone should have some basic math skills. So how far is this bridge? How far have we gone? How much gas have we used from the last moment when the light went on to now? Like, can we make it? And then I realized, well, just getting to the other side isn't enough. Like the gas station is not perched on the other side of the Eastern Shore. Like you have to go another 7 miles. Right. We were so excited to finally get to that gas station. I can't even tell you.
That's funny.
Oh my God.
Did they give you a hard time? The boys give you a hard time?
Well, actually Sam, the older one, he said, what, that was actually kind of fun. I really appreciated, kind of breaking up the boredom with something interesting to happen. I'm like, I'm really glad you find like my mistakes to be interesting.
That's excellent. I like that. That's a good way of looking at things. That's a positive outlook. There you
go. Yeah. But I was thinking like 7 miles is a long way to walk with a can, like gas can.
No kidding. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right. Great talking to you again. So we're going to make a point of this every week, guys. We'll have some guests on. We had a fantastic guest there last week at Bill Franco was excellent. We'll have him on again too. He was quite a guy. Not just his at a personal level. He was really interesting man. Yeah,
Jeremy. And we'll have to get him on to talk about his first Ironman next time.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yes, absolutely. All right. Great to see you again, Allie. Try not to drink too much sake. Try to make sure you got enough gas in your car. Any other issues going? We'll have a segment every week for you and I.
It's always beverage issues with me.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Good talking to you. See you, buddy.
Right. Bye.